Welcome to this RE1 and RE5 study lesson focusing on the FAIS Act role players, Part 1. We'll examine the key concepts needed to understand how role players are structured under the FAIS Act. The regulator built the FAIS framework in a logical sequence. First, the FSCA identified the regulated activity, which is the provision of a financial service in relation to a financial product to a client. The FSCA then recognized that this activity involves 4 different functions that need regulation. These functions are providing a financial service in one's own capacity, providing a financial service on behalf of another, managing and overseeing the provision of financial services, and supervising compliance with the FAIS framework. Each of these functions was then given a specific legal role. Performing the financial service in one's own capacity places a person or business in the role of an FSP. Performing the financial service on behalf of another places the person in the role of a representative. Managing and overseeing the activity places the person in the role of a key individual. Supervising compliance places the person in the role of a compliance officer. Once the roles were created, the regulator attached an authorization process and fit and proper requirements to each role. These are the legal standards that must be met before a person may perform that function. A person or business only steps into a FAIS role when they actually perform the regulated function. The role does not exist because of a job title, qualification, or employment contract. It exists only while the function is being performed. When the function is performed, the role is occupied, and authorization is required. This also explains the difference between employment duties and legal functions. An employee of an FSP may perform many tasks, but the employee is only regarded as a representative when providing a financial service on behalf of the FSP. When performing administrative or support tasks, the employee is not occupying a FAIS role. In exams and compliance decisions, the key is always to identify the function being performed in the scenario and then link that function to the correct FAIS role. In law, the functions of role players may be performed either by a legal person or by a natural person, depending on the nature of the role and the responsibilities attached to it. A legal person refers to a group of individuals that the law recognizes as a single legal entity. This typically takes the form of a company. Although the business consists of directors, employees, and operational systems, the law treats the business as one legal identity with a single registration number. A natural person, by contrast, is an individual who exists in their own right and is recognized independently by law, usually through a personal identity number. Within the FAIS framework, some roles may be performed by either a legal person or a natural person. A good example is the role of a FSP, which may be authorized either as a business entity or as an individual sole proprietor. However, the role of the commissioner and key individual require direct personal accountability and therefore can only be performed by a natural person. Under the FAIS Act, role players are grouped into 3 categories: regulatory bodies, regulated market participants, and affected stakeholders. Regulatory bodies are responsible for oversight and enforcement. The FSCA is the main regulator and supervises conduct in the financial services industry. The FAIS Ombudsman handles financial claims from clients against FSPs, and professional bodies support the regulator by setting standards and assisting with quality assurance. Regulated market participants are directly subject to the FAIS Act. The FSP is the regulated entity responsible for rendering financial services. Reps render services on behalf of the FSP. Key individuals manage and oversee compliance, and compliance officers monitor and report on compliance to the FSCA. Affected stakeholders are not directly regulated under FAIS, but are impacted by financial services. These include product suppliers and clients. Regulated market participants may only perform their functions once authorized by the FSCA. Authorization is the legal permission to perform a regulated function, and without it, the activity is unlawful. In law, authorization takes one of 2 forms: a license or a permit. A license is issued where a role player carries primary responsibility for a regulated activity and may be held directly liable through civil claims. A permit applies where the role player performs a limited function under the authority of another party. Under the FAIS Act, the FSP is the regulated entity that directly renders financial services and therefore holds a license. Reps, key individuals, and compliance officers perform regulated functions as employees or appointees of the FSP. For this reason, their authorization takes the form of a permit rather than a license. It is therefore incorrect to refer to reps, key individuals, or compliance officers as licensed. Only an FSP is licensed under the FAIS Act. Whenever an exam option uses the words representative and license in the same sentence, it is incorrect because only the FSP is licensed, while the representative is authorized by permit. We already understand that when a legal or natural person performs a regulated function under the FAIS Act, they step into a regulated role. Each regulated role operates within a defined legal framework that determines the role capacity and the following key compliance aspects. Before a regulated role may be performed, the person must be authorized into that role. Authorization requirements include the formal authorization process, the approved scope of authorization, and the fit and proper requirements. Authorization is not a once-off event. It is subject to ongoing conditions that must be maintained for as long as the role is performed. These conditions include continuous compliance with fit and proper requirements, adherence to regulatory obligations, and compliance with any specific conditions imposed by the FSCA at approval. Each regulated role carries defined legal responsibilities. A legal responsibility is a statutory requirement that must be met at all times, failing which regulatory action may follow. In addition to authorization and responsibilities, regulated roles are subject to conduct standards. These standards are set out primarily in the General Code of Conduct. Non-compliance occurs when a role player performs a regulated function without authorization, outside the approved scope, in breach of authorization conditions, in violation of a legal responsibility, or contrary to conduct standards. Non-compliance may result in regulatory action. That concludes Part 1 of this lesson. Please follow Part 2 for more information on the regulatory bodies within the FAIS framework.